All right. We've got everyone coming in. So we have been talking about authenticity. We've been talking about finding your passion. We've been talking about some self-discovery with curious questions. And now we are going to talk about, if you've already found that passion, is it okay to change it? What happens if you fall out of love of something that you thought was your, one job? Are you supposed to have one job? It's not like a soulmate. This is my job for the rest of my life. And I think traditionally it used to be, and it's becoming less that way. And I'm really excited to speak with this group of panelists because they all have an interesting career journey that took some twists that you look back at and it's hard to put the dots together. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to put the dots together and then talk about the journey and what makes that valuable. All right. I am going to have each one of you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us maybe where you're working now, and then also where that journey started, and then we'll dig a little deeper into that. I am going to start with Ashley Dixon. Just go ahead. I'm going to let you do it.
Okay, can you hear me okay? I just put my headset on.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Dixon. I guess long story short, so my experience is in communications, marketing, media, and I'm originally from Florida, have lived in the Northeast, lived in New York City, used to work in television and film production. So I got to work on some cool stuff a while ago, like I used to work for ESPN, like doing college football production. I used to work on Law and Order SVU, a few movies that I did, and some original productions as well. And so then following that, which we'll get into these pivots, I kind of followed a similar track, but decided I wanted to head into like education. And then I actually worked at an HBCU, Lincoln University, for a while. Created a company and have been the owner of A+A Communications Group for 5 years. Got to know Jane Clark here through that organization, through our partnerships together. And then now I still own my business, but I've kind of I won't say put it to the side, but have placed more focus on working. I'm actually now a communications marketing manager for Amazon Web Services. So I kind of have both going right now. And I am a mom to 4. And that's a big part of, I think, my story that will be, that we're talking about today. So it's a big factor in my career. So that's the long and short of it.
I'm starting to regret making this a panel because I feel like each one of you would have been a great interview all by yourselves. Also, if anyone listened to Jane's keynote, this is the Ashley that she was talking about that took her off to Texas to go pitch a client that they won. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so moving on, Holly, why don't you go ahead and give us what's your career breakdown? Tell us about you.
So, Holly Quinn, wait a minute. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Holly Quinn. I am the lead reporter for Technically Delaware. I'm the only reporter in Delaware for Technically, and I cover technology, economic development, education, equity, and basically stuff like that. It's mainly tech reporting. Where I started was art school, and that's where I thought, like when I was in high school, and then I was in an art majors program, and I went into college, and like Jane, I majored in photography, but unfortunately I was majoring in photography during a time when we were doing darkrooms, but we weren't yet doing digital. So that was kind of a big waste. But I mean, it wasn't a waste. It was, but I had to teach myself all of that later. But anyway, after going to college. But anyway, so yeah, and then I wound up pretty soon after graduation getting into writing. I landed in a music paper in Wilmington called Big Shout. This was in the 90s. And had some pivots, again, when my son was born, I was working like at home and so doing jobs that I could do at home. And yeah, so then I sort of went from art to art, someone who wrote about art, music, and then theater. I was a theater reviewer for a couple different publications for a while, and then now a tech writer.
Okay. Which I remember when I asked Holly to do this, I was like, oh, that's such a crazy pivot from the arts to the tech writing. And then she explained it. And I'm like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. But we still have plenty to talk about. All right, Lee, go ahead and tell us your story. And I feel like you're going to have to condense it a lot because you have a lot of different jobs that took you all over the world.
I'll keep it short. I'm Lee Bursty, and I'd like to thank Jen and Jane for putting this together and putting together an incredibly dynamic group of people as presenters. This has been a terrific day. I've thoroughly enjoyed it and found them all very engaging. So thanks for doing this. What I'm in the process of pivoting to, my next pivot, is I'm getting ready for retirement. And I don't want to retire from my job. I want to retire to something that's going to be fun to do and might even be able to make some money. So I've become a commercial drone pilot. So I take aerial images for fun and profit. Right now it's more fun than profit, but there's a path that I'm going on to get myself there. And part of the reason I want to do that is because I don't want to do what I'm currently doing, which is IT. I've been doing IT for several decades. I've had it. I'm done with IT. Any IT I do from going forward is going to be for me. I did have my own consulting company. I was a technical trainer that took me around the world. I was a product manager that has taken me around the world. I've been a sales engineer that has taken me around the world. And I've also was in the early stages of my career, a classroom teacher.
Yeah. No. I was like, I heard the full story, and I know there's some good stuff in there. Okay, Nia, last but not least, give us your twisting career path.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nia Reynolds. Currently, I'm the engagement manager with Dana, Delaware Alliance for Nonprofit Advancement. And I kind of got this job on a whim. I participated in a poverty simulation while I was enrolled at Delaware State University. And my current boss, Melissa Hopkins, picked me out of the crowd and was looking for an intern. And I was a freshman, so I was like, I don't even think I can do internships. But luckily, we built a relationship and I started there. They retained me eventually as I forgot what my former role was. Membership something, and then I transitioned into the engagement manager. But before I even got to Delaware State University, my career was actually in early childhood education. So I started off as a preschool teacher, and then I moved up to owning up my own center, my own family child care center here at my home. And then entrepreneurship is very different than education. They're very separate industries. And I don't think I understood that as much as I understood it once I was my own business owner. So doing that kind of taught me that, maybe this wasn't for me. That's okay. But I have to, as we said, pivot to something else. And I thought that social work was going to be that. My sister's a social worker. Both of my sisters are actually social workers. So I was like, oh, perfect. I'll be a social worker. I don't know why I didn't return to early childhood education, but I got inspired, I guess. And I decided to get a degree in social work, which now I'm pivoting out of again. And I've changed my major to back to childhood development. So my circle has been drawn all the way fully back to where I started.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Because I didn't even realize you were still in school.
It's been a long journey.
Okay. So I guess let's go ahead and build off of that. Nia, which of those jobs was the first one where you thought, oh, this is it. This is my passion. And then what happened that made you realize it wasn't?
Yeah, I think early childhood education was my original passion. So when I got into college, fresh out of high school, being 18 years old, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed in college, I did elementary education. And my first semester, I kind of realized there's a professionalism that's involved in that. You can't be as intimate with the children or with the family or with the community as I think I wanted to be. So I thought that early childhood education would be a better fit. So I jumped right into that, and I really loved it. My love has not waned in any way. I still love early childhood education. I love children. I love, community enrichment. I love being very hands-on in that process. And I think I was a little bit dissatisfied with the work environments that I was in. Service providers, we sometimes get overworked, underpaid, and I don't think that I really valued the community, like the teamwork element of it. I was more just like focused on the uncomfortable parts of it. So I was like, you know what? I love early childhood education so much. I'm just going to open up my own. I've mastered this. I can do it. And so I decided to do that and get into less of teaching and more into entrepreneurship, which I think was the divide for me. I really wanted to grow in my teaching abilities. I didn't necessarily want to grow in my entrepreneurial abilities, which is why I had to pivot again from opening up my home center to getting in a social work degree and thus working at Dana. So my passion was always the same. I think that I just couldn't find the right outlet for that passion yet.
Okay.
Can I just piggyback? I don't mean to interrupt, but I think that what Nia said, something is really important there. I think we hear so much, and it's not knocking it either way, but I think we hear so much about business ownership, being an entrepreneur, being your own boss, and it's often packaged. Usually it's packaged as it is empowering and it's awesome. And I'm saying that as a business owner. On the other side of it, I felt like I didn't hear enough people saying like, this doesn't really fit for everyone. And when I had challenges as well, like I've never seen myself as an entrepreneur, and I have like passions and I created a business around those passions. But like, I remember sitting there thinking like, people are like, so are you the CEO? And I'm like, gosh, I just can't, I'm not that person. Like, it's not me. And, but I think it's okay. And I would like it if more people were to say like, I tried entrepreneurship, I tried business ownership, and it's not for everyone. It's okay. It's okay.
A set of skills, your passion comes with like the things that you're passionate about. And then entrepreneurship is its own set of skills. And I think that you can make it your passion as well, or you can learn that that's your passion, but sometimes it's actually not a good fit. And I accepted that. That's
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jen, I jumped in there. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. That's fine.
No, I think that's a great point, Ashley, because it's not for everybody, and it's a real balancing act to deal with entrepreneurship, and you don't have to do that balance when you are working for someone. It's actually done for you, and a lot of the pressures are taken off, and it's a balance that you have to fight every single day.
So right.
Yeah. So Lee, for you, what point in your journey was this is my passion, oh wait, it's not? Was it the entrepreneurship? Was it leaving entrepreneurship?
Which day of the week was it?
Oh, and actually follow-up question too. So at what point did you realize something wasn't your passion, and were you conflicted about it? Were you like, oh, I'm giving up on myself? Like how did it make you feel that you were pivoting away from something that you thought was your passion?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say something about pivot.
Okay.
Pivot doesn't have to be a total change of direction or a throw out something and go somewhere else. It can be an embellishment or a subtle change or just a new orientation. My wife and I dance, and we pivot all the time. And it's an embellishment to what you are doing. So it doesn't have to be just a total reorientation of everything that you have done. It can just be a slight shift in where you're headed. So it doesn't have to be as disruptive to your life and to your existence as it might be. Sometimes it definitely is. You go from working for someone to working on your own. That's huge. That's a big change. The passions through the years, there's been consistency along the line as to the things that I have, the different things that I've done. And it does change. It changes when the kids come along. It changes if there's an economic upheaval. I think that we are all totally being disrupted right now by all sorts of events that are happening nationally and internationally. That what was true last week is not true today, let alone last year or last decade. So these reorientations aren't necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing and a way to just keep going forward and keeping the excitement real.
Okay, but did you ever feel conflicted when you reoriented?
No, I didn't. I didn't have any regrets about changing. I didn't have any regrets about where I went. If it didn't work, I could refocus, and it didn't always work. I did have a programmer job from in an organization, and thank goodness it did not last long. It was one of the worst jobs I had ever had. But I made several friends there that I keep in touch with today. We still stay in touch, and I was able to provide a benefit to them more so than they did to me. But it wasn't a conflict. I didn't feel conflicted about it. I was very glad to leave, and it turned out to be well.
Sometimes it can be a relief, when you finally can accept, that you want to make a change and that you're going to do it. Because when you have to pivot, it's because you're in a situation that is not desirable. So when you can finally surrender to that and make the pivot, it can almost be relieving, oh gosh, now I can finally get to the other side.
And it's not a failure. It's not a failure.
Yeah. That's a good point. Holly, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on your pivots. Yes. Did you have conflict there, or were they easy for you? Did they feel natural?
Well, I think one thing with the kind of journalism that I got into, which is basically tech journalism, but I've actually kind of almost curated it because I'm in Delaware and we have a little more flexibility here because it's such a small market and we just can't write about app startups. We just, you know what I mean? We need to be broader. So, but when I think back, 20 years ago or whatever, the thought that I would be basically a business writer, which is what that boils down to, writing about startups, their companies, it's business, it's, funding and things like that. I never would have thought that I would ever want to do that. The way that I got into it was just through freelancing. So I was freelancing reviews, but that wasn't enough. So, I started faking it till you make it, really, because I was, I'll write, I'll do, different copywriting sort of things and different writing jobs that I would pick up, and then I got picked up as a freelancer for Technically, and it was fine. It was cool. I actually really liked learning more about that part of the community. But then when they needed to fill the lead reporter role, and I was basically, I was a freelancer. I was living in Delaware, and so I was up for it. I got it, obviously, but there was a lot of talking about they were sort of well, how many stories, how should this look? And they were very focused on the tech that's more like what you think of with Silicon Valley. And Delaware's technology is so much not that. It's it is a little bit, but it's science, biotech, agricultural, all these other things. And so I started being we need to broaden into the other types of tech in the state, but also I started writing about things like education. They were that's not really our beat. About the pipeline, the workforce pipeline, economic development. And then I started realizing I could have some kind of an impact. One thing that that just matters to me is equity, racial equity, actually for all, disabilities and all kinds of things, so I realized, things that were sort of on the peripherals, but I was I'm going to get this in there more because we have more flexibility. So that's how it became something that I actually really became passionate about, because I was like, I'm going to write about this, this program for youth. And it does matter because these jobs need to be filled by people, and I want them to be filled by the kids in Wilmington. Like the narrative had been, oh, let's bring new people to Delaware. And I'm like, we have people here. We have people here that need to train the kids growing up here. And so that became, one of my things. But so that's how it got like to where it was not just like, oh, I'm writing about like, like business stuff. Like where I got to like really care about it. And I've started to realize that like things like theater reviewing, there's not a lot of opportunity to do that a lot. Or I mean, there is in a way, like when you're covering the arts, obviously, but usually it's like if you're covering something, you don't necessarily, I don't know. It's not the same. I feel like I have managed to carve with technically where I feel like I can talk about things that I care about and make them relevant to,
Right.
the brand.
Yeah. Well, from what you're saying, it sounds like you're shaping your role.
Mhm.
Like it's not just, oh, I pivoted into this, but like you're building it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, sort of. Yeah, I mean, I have shaped it a lot because, like I said, like if they wanted it to look just like, Philadelphia's or DC talking about as like tech bros, it's just not going to happen here. Like we need to do more than that. Not that that's all they talk about there, but, we just don't have, we have a limited number of those specific kind of startups. Right. And we definitely cover them, but we fill the gap with it. I think it should be more meaningful, and not more meaningful, but other meaningful things. Maybe some of the other markets don't have the space, although we do have a nonprofit in Philly, sister magazine that covers a lot of that stuff.
Generosity?
Separately, but we kind of, yes. So we do it all together more in Delaware. Yeah.
Okay. Group question. So this is something that I have been thinking about. I feel like there's the traditional wisdom. You go to school for something, you get a job in that thing, you do that for 30 years or 40 years, right? And I don't think I know anyone who does that anymore. And the more I talk to people who have jumped around, all those experiences they've had have taught them things that are relevant in different ways. They've taught those skills, right? So what do you think are the pros and cons of career hopping versus the traditional role of staying in the same thing and just being an expert at it and only doing one thing?
I think that, go ahead, Nia.
No, you go.
I think there are definitely both sides of it, pros and cons. I mean, we're in a different time where I think the expectation definitely has changed. Previously, if you had multiple things on your resume over, within 5 years, if you'd had like 4 jobs or 3 jobs, that would be frowned upon, and they'd think that you're just a job hopper. You're not able to commit, and your resume might be just placed into the discard stack. Now, actually, I think people are looking to see that, does that mean you're possibly just very marketable, that you've got experience from lots of organizations, or, but I think that if that's a strategy, if that's an approach that someone takes, I think as long as you're thinking about, you're being conscious of the fact that, okay, I have been at this many jobs in this certain amount of time, rather than just letting go of a job before thinking about the long-term implications of it, because sometimes it works in some people's favor. I think that also if you, you have to put it in combination too with how did you leave those places? What is your professional reputation? Because I think a lot of places are just, if you've got a great professional reputation, they're going to be excited to have you, even if it's for a year and a half. Some places will add incentives on to make sure that, like additional bonuses or whatever, even to make sure that they can retain you. But then, so I think that it depends on how you manage it. If you're being strategic about going between, jobs in short amounts of time. But I just don't think it's the same as it used to be. I mean, I grew up in a military family. So my dad was in the Air Force. All I could remember is that, and he didn't have to do the whole job shopping thing like when I was younger that I recall. And my mom, she's been in the same job for like 30 something years now. So to me, having changed at first, I felt a little bit like, are you supposed to be doing this? Like, this is, am I allowed? And I've had to realize that, it's okay if I'm going to be strategic about it.
Yeah, I know my parents give me, like when I was first getting out into the job market, they're giving me all this advice. And then Google makes more advice available that's not directly from my family. And I'm like, everything they told me was not accurate to the new job market, And like my parents are wise. They know a lot of things. They've taught me a lot. But that was one thing where it's like, this does not apply anymore.
Yeah, that's very true. And my generation, I go back a little bit, we were taught that go to college, graduate, get married, have a job, and that's it. And you stay in that job. And even when I was first starting out in my career path, who would have thought back 40 years ago that
did it freeze or is my computer acting weird?
No, we're good. He's good.
Who would have thought that 40 years later, DuPont would be no more? That was the most stable place that anybody could ever consider working. I never worked there, but it's not even here anymore. And so it is very strange. Also, I think that sometimes, especially in today's market, the only way to advance your career is to move into another company.
I think I think it's a good thing. Well, that the mentality is starting to change. Like when I was growing up too, it was like the idea that like if you didn't go to like a 4-year college or whatever, that was like the thing, and you had to go there and live there and sleep there, and that was like what was sort of expected. And I did that. It's so much debt and all this other stuff, and now I just don't think that might be okay that's okay for some people, but I don't think I don't think that should be the default. I think that can be for some people. Certainly, I think and then we've been seeing also with the COVID and the closings of universities, and people feel like they're not getting their money's worth when they're just paying for the education. The education isn't the thing that's valuable. Things that are part of this culture, and I think that's fine. Like, I'm not saying abolish it, but I'm like I grew up in the was like, obviously we did have VOTEC options and things like that, but it was like there was so much like you have to like go away to college and all this stuff. And I feel like if I don't think I would have done that. Go back. I don't think I would have. There's so many other options, and especially with the way technology moves so quickly, there's lots of different ways that you can learn skills that you can get to jobs or start businesses that you don't. Sometimes, Google would find that sometimes people who were knew more than someone who had a computer science degree just graduated, because it doesn't always move at the same speed. So yeah, I think that college culture, it's fine, but I think it's good to like move forward into other ways of educating and getting into those talent pipelines.
To kind of build on that. It maybe I'm more exposed to this because I'm in marketing, but I feel like the learning curve has gotten so short with I'm learning to use MailChimp and WordPress and this CRM and that CMS. And you get a new job, you don't know which website builder they're going to have, but you'll figure it out on the go. So what would be the point of going to school for 4 years for that when there will be something new out by the time you finish? So kind of exactly what you said. And with that shorter lead time, I don't need to be in this career for 10 years to be good at it. Like, I just need the ability to figure out how to use the website.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think I'm like kind of a hallmark of the new age, like generation of flexibility in your career. And it doesn't really change. Like, you have to hustle for a job regardless. You have to, you know, put your best foot forward and show your inner awesome, you know, at any position that you're in, similar to what Ashley was saying, how you have to have a good professional reputation. And I feel like that kind of precedes you more than, like, your resume is almost a representation of who you are, like who I am and who you're hiring. And so I have to be able to present that to you regardless of what my degree is or what past jobs I've had or whatever the skills that I've written on this document. I have to actually be those skills and show those skills and present them. So I think that has, I've seen that employers really respond to that more than what my just paper printout PDF resume says. So.
Right. Okay. Well, I had individual questions for you guys, but you already answered them all.
I like the question, work to live or live to work?
Oh, okay. That's a great one to kind of start to wind down. All right. Well, you go first.
Oh, okay. So I actually thought the most like idyllic answer would be like live to work or work to live. Like, you separate your responsibilities from your like personal time and your leisure time, the things that make you feel warm and fuzzy. But I think in reality for me, I kind of work to like, I live to work. I'm a service provider. So I kind of live to make myself available to the people who need me and like surrender myself to like my responsibilities. And I think that work is more than just your job. Like, work is all various forms of production. When I'm making a painting, I'm doing work. When I'm helping tutoring my nephew, I'm doing work. You know, when I'm walking my dog, I'm doing work. I'm participating in work in so many various parts of my life. And I think that when I approach things with work, I can like bring that productive energy to every part of my life. So I prefer to think that I actually live to work. My whole life is work, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that is an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, I like that a lot.
I've done both, and I mean, like, as far as like during their session, I was delivering pizzas, you know, and I've worked, you know, and when I was younger too, I worked restaurant jobs, but this was not like being a college student, and it's interesting because you can still get things out of it because I learned a lot about the city, and I learned a lot about where things were, and I learned a lot about how things looked. I'll tell people that where 1313 Innovation used to be, but the Hercules building, I'll tell people, you know, this used to have like little waterfalls in it, like in like the early 2000s. It had these, you know, waterfalls and indoor plants and all this, like, you know, this whatever that was, like the big thing at the time. And I only know that because I was delivering I was delivering catering at the time to all of the buildings. So I feel like that's not ideal, but it got me through it, and I made a choice because I had a young child at the time, so I needed something flexible. I needed something where I wasn't going to go get a 9-to-5 job, and that was in an office because it just didn't work for my life. So, and at the end of that, I started doing freelancing where I could work from home. And before that, I was working at home as a personal assistant for a businesswoman in Wilmington. So a work to live situation too. I think it's definitely fun to, I mean, I don't know. I think that there's something for both of it because I feel like a lot of people, I remember like when I was working at Big Shout, and there was the UPS guy would come in and he would go, you know, and we talk every day, and then he would be gone for like 6 weeks and he was on vacation somewhere. because it was this good union job. And I was like, wow, I never really thought about, like working, doing, like it's not a dream job, but taking out all that time. I've never had that kind of job, but, I think that there's something, that's a choice, to take your 4 to 6 weeks traveling and doing maybe not your dream job.
And I can't see Lee. It looks like it's frozen for me. So if Lee is talking and tell me to stop.
No, he's still there. You're
sorry, good. I feel terrible. I can't see Lee, and I'd love to hear Lee again. But so my thought with that question is to kind of piggyback off of Holly. I think both are okay at different times in your life and in your career, and that's okay. And my whole kind of mantra, over the last few years, has just been it's okay to be flexible and to not be the Instagram version of a business or career person, right? Because I feel like the picture of it is that you're supposed to, like you said, Jen, go to college, you get through your major, you get that internship, you get that job, and you stick in that, and then your picture is on the cover of Fortune or something, right? It's just, and you see people presenting it that way, and it leaves out so much. And I think that I've over the years recognized there are times when I chose my job completely based on passion. It doesn't matter how much it pays. It doesn't matter, how many hours I'm working. I just want to do that. I want to live for this job. And then there are times when I've had to make decisions for my family and say, what is, I've got, so my 2 stepkids, my oldest 2, both have special needs. We have 4 kids all together. So 4 in this house that we're busy taking care of. And so that's 4 college funds so that we can possibly help them to reduce debt. All those things that you have to think of. And there are times when I think you have to make some choices, to do what is best for you and your family or whatever at that time. And so I think that there are different periods where, like I said, I was working in television and film production. And I know a lot of people have said, why would you have given that up? Because when I was working at Lincoln University, I loved that job. That was my passion. I got to run a media center, teach young people, predominantly Black students, about how to create media. We had a radio station and television station that I was responsible for. They could, they were teaching media literacy, how to use media to be democratic, to be educational and informational, and to use your voice. And it was so empowering and exciting. We're in the community building these programs. And then I carried that over, ultimately going into Wilmington and doing media literacy programs, working with at-risk youth. Went into the detention centers and brought laptops, iMacs, so they could record their stories and talk about what they've been through. And, went into group homes, youth group homes, and helped those young people to talk about identity. And I loved all of that. And then I recognized too, though, that it took a lot of time. And then it also, was this really going to be the best for my family at certain times? And so that's when I decided to create my own business and see, maybe I get some contracts that are kind of some steady contracts that are kind of like more traditional marketing or whatever. And I can still do those passion projects. I don't want to call them passion projects, but the things that kind of fueled my passion more. At the same time too, under one umbrella of my business. And so me starting my business was me I was wavering that work to live to work. I have to make decisions, not just for me, but for a family. And so I think it's okay if then you make a decision to live to work, you have to work to live.
Okay. Well,
I agree.
I think it's another situation of balance. Like Ashley said, sometimes one plays, and the other times the other plays a bigger role. I tend to lean more toward work to live because I just want to go play and have fun. And work is the
playing fun is work too.
Okay, well, let's finish up on like an action item for the people in our audience who are maybe, Yes, Donna, we will get the code. We're not there yet. For the people who know that they're stuck and they're like, okay, I see something, a pivot is needed to get out of the situation. How do you figure out where to pivot to? Like, what kind of tricks do you use to figure out what the shift is going to be?
I think Ashley said it best earlier when she talked about strategy. I think when you want to do something else, but you don't really know what you want to do, just think about what you can do. Like, what is available to you? What are the skills that I have? What will fit in the lifestyle that I currently am leading? You know, what's going to work for me? And then do that. Like, as I mentioned earlier, I was seeking a social work degree. That didn't work for me in the long term, but it really worked for me transitioning out of being a business owner. I literally had nothing else. And then doing that allowed me to get the job that I have now that really exemplifies all of my passions in different ways. So it wasn't really about doing what I wanted to do. It was more so like, what can I do? I have very limited options. I have these specific skills. I have these specific passions. I am the person that I am. I've had this journey my whole life. What can I do? And then pursue that, with a smile on your face and optimistically knowing that you can always transition again.
Yeah.
And also, sometimes it does take a while. Sometimes, you have to do things that are not, dream job stuff to start working toward getting to a place where you're more stable. Like I said before, I was doing freelancing, extremely unstable. Yeah. I mean, I would get, it wasn't stable. And I did that for a long time where I was just plugging at it. And I would have my, couple of regular clients, and some of it was what I really liked to write about, but it wasn't enough money to live on. So, because this was all, again, like freelance individual, I wasn't on payroll, and plugging at it. And sometimes and sometimes doing other jobs that weren't what I, related. Eventually, I feel like, sometimes that's sort of what, it pays off, I think, to stay with something that, even if it's not in your area. Like, I think I probably, if I had gone to journalism school, I would have been working, whatever, as a reporter way earlier. But I think I would have such a different sensibility that I don't know. I feel like I would rather just gone the way I went, I think.
Yeah, like maybe you would have pivoted out of it anyway, because if that was what you went to school for, you wouldn't have had the same lens.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, no, I mean, I hear that, because I feel like whenever people say I would undo this mistake in my life or that life, somebody else always pops up and says, but that mistake is what made you who you are. So can you ever truly say, like, I could have avoided this, that, or the other? Like, no, they all kind of brought you here.
Opportunities present themselves in very weird ways, and sometimes it's difficult to identify an opportunity as something that's really positive. I was working for a small company that went out of business fairly quickly, and left all the employees pretty well stranded. Although several of them went to work for a competitor, and I kept thinking, gee, do I want to do that? Maybe I'll give it a shot and go on my own and see what that brings. And I said, well, what's the worst that could happen? I'd have to get a real job in a month or two or whatever. And it turned out that I had that job, or I had that business for 20 years. I was able to service existing customers, and I figured, okay, that'll last maybe 18 months. Because they're going to transition to some other product, because there's no one except me to support that. And I ended up working with several of those customers for 7 or 8 years before they transitioned away. And that gave me plenty of time to figure out what the next steps on my own were. And even that business evolved and pivoted several times along the way. I started out being a hired gun for custom programming, and ended up being a trainer that was asked to train all over the world. It was a very different kind of path than I had ever anticipated, which led to a lot of things that I'm doing today.
Yeah.
May I make a final comment?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if this is related necessarily, but I just thought that it resonates with me that, like, you know, your passion and your career, you know, they don't necessarily have to coincide or like be one and the same. Like, your passion can be your passion. You can have outlets for your passion. I think it's important that you enjoy your job, because we, as you know, workers, we spend majority of our time there. I mean, I'm a working class person. I don't really have the luxury of like taking time off or going on expensive lavish vacations or something. So I definitely want to enjoy my job, but I've come to really understand that if my passions aren't necessarily fully reflected in my job, that's not my highest priority. It's that my job is sustainable and that my job is enjoyable. Do I like the pacing? Do I like the team? Do I like the task at hand? Whether or not I get to paint at my job doesn't really get my, you know, gears going. Like, it used to. I used to be like, how can I integrate every single one of my passions into my career, like, and really soak it for all it's worth? But that was really idyllic, and I realized it actually doesn't really matter to me. As long as I can sustain the career, and every day I go in and I feel good about my job, that's good enough for me. And when I come home, I can pursue my passions. On the weekends, I can pursue my passions. Again, if my job is clashing with that, where, you know, I have limited timing, then maybe that's not the job for me, because it's not that it's not allowing me to include my passions, but it's more so stifling my outlet for my passions. So you want to enjoy your job, but I don't think that it has to necessarily reflect every single nuanced part of who you are.
Yeah, that's really well said. All right. Thank you so much, panelists. I am going to go ahead and wrap us up. I am so sorry that we lost Ashley, but at least she was here for most of it. Panelists, if you would be willing to share like your website links to whatever your current job and or passion and or whatever, and then the way people know where to go and find you online. But yeah, so thank you so much, everyone. I am going to go ahead and wrap it up. The event, or the code that Donna was asking about, is change. Oh, it's okay, Ashley. You were here for most of it. That's right. Just want to put change. All right. I'm going to go ahead and call this.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.